Welcome to the Ginger and Chocolate Podcast. I am your co host, Lindsay, and I'm flying solo today. Mike had a little, kid emergency, so he wasn't able to make the recording. But I'm here with our guest, Steve Keesal. I'm excited to talk to him about all manner of things. Hi, Steve. How's it going?
Absolutely excellent. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Of course. We're just going to jump right in. Usually, Mike and I do a little bit of small talk, but let's see. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, just about your history. I know that you were in the military. Tell us a little bit about that and kind of what you do today.
Excellent. So I was an airborne ranger, and I was actually in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and I am an Afghan and Iraq vet from the early 2000s. I went once to
Okay.
Afghanistan and once to Iraq with those guys.
Wow.
And
So just so we can clarify, because I don't know anything. If you're a ranger, then you're in the army.
okay, so I'll give you the royale if you're
Yes,
if we
please.
have time for it. And you have to interrupt me because I'm a guy who can talk too much, Lindsay. So
No, no. This is a
yeah.
podcast. That's all we do is talk. You're good.
Okay, good. When I joined the Army, I went to infantry basic training in Fort Benning, and that in and of itself was a difficult thing for me, or I think for anyone, because there's obviously it's kind of getting into the institution of the army, but there's also a lot as far as exercise is concerned, as far as getting in shape. And I was not a guy who was in great shape when I did that. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to be a commando. I wanted to do it, but I didn't know all that it entailed. I didn't know that I was going to have to become an incredible, like, professional sports style in shape guy, which I never was. And so, I mean, I was like the captain of the football team in high school and so on and so forth, but I was never an athlete until I joined the Army.
Oh,
So
okay.
I joined the Army, and you go to infantry basic training, which is kind of separate from other. I know you guys are into working out and extreme
Mm-hmm.
sports and that kind of stuff. So this is kind of as well as mental health and, spiritual strength and so on and so forth. So I think that this kind of hits the whole gamut.
Yeah.
So, so infantry basic training, you go, 14 or 16 weeks straight through, because you do basic training, which the whole army does, and then you do in advanced individual training with the same drill sergeants.
Oh,
And
okay.
so that was a difficult thing and a hardcore thing and a beautiful thing. I would say that that was the first time in my life that an institution hadn't let me down, because it was hardcore and intense, and just the way I had imagined it in movies, right? So
Oh, so
that
it is just the way you imagine it, because I've seen movies and I'm like, that seems very challenging to the way that the basic training is with the drill sergeants and stuff.
it was beautiful that way
Mm,
in how hardcore it was, and how
mhm.
unaccepting of weakness, and how it was just something where people were had to be tough,
Yeah.
and you just don't see that. You see everywhere where there's excuses and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
But
Were
this
you
wasn't that place.
were you did you find some, toughness, or were you able to dig down just out of necessity that you didn't know was there? Where you're tapping into things that you didn't previously know you had?
Maybe not yet, but this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
when I graduated from basic training, I had what they call an option 40 contract, which means that you can go straight through basic training, straight through airborne school. And if you pass basic training and if you graduate airborne school, then you can get a shot at joining the Ranger Regiment.
Oh,
So
okay.
airborne school was 3 weeks of absolute pleasure, because I could drink at night, I could hang out with my friends. It was less regimented, and it was kind of like blowing off steam after infantry basic training.
Mm,
I think a lot of the people who were in airborne school, it was a very difficult thing for them to go through. It was, had a really high washout rate, like maybe a third of the people didn't graduate.
Wow.
And it was, something that maybe scares a lot of people and that kind of stuff. But I thought it was just kind of a spiritual uplifter after infantry basic training. And I was already someone who was, now running all the time, running 3 to 5 miles every day, and then running everywhere I went, doing 1,000 push-ups in a day, that kind of thing. It was an extremely physical thing. And so everything in the Army that you do involves doing 25 push-ups and one for the airborne ranger in the sky. Every time that something gets screwed up or someone wants to talk to you, they talk to you while you're doing push-ups. That's just
Oh.
kind of the way it is. So then at the end of this 3 weeks of airborne school, we went on to RIP. It's now called RASP. The Army has changed it a little bit,
Mhm.
but it was called the Ranger Indoctrination Process. And we started out with about, let's say, 350 guys for a physical fitness test at about 4:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And then 100 people passed that test and went to the first formation, which was,
So
so
so you're saying that the other 200 and something, that was it. Then they were just done at
that,
that
yeah,
point.
they had didn't meet the standard and they were gone.
Wow. That's
So,
a
so,
short.
so then, Lindsay, it was beautiful. They would walk up to people in this first formation where there were 100 people, and they would grab people and say, "Get the out of here." And who knows? That guy might have been the greatest guy ever. We'll never know.
Right.
But and I don't know what they were looking for. I think it's probably intensity. But
Mhm.
they wanted very intense people, and they found them.
Yeah.
So at the end of that formation, and this is 20 minutes, there were 88 guys to start the class.
Wow.
And we started that class, and 3 weeks later, 18 of us graduated, and a
Holy
lot of great
moly.
people quit. And it was as hardcore as you can imagine. Someone would get off a truck that they had put them on because they had fallen out or fallen behind in a road march, and they would jump off a truck with their rucksack and fall on the ground due to some sort of heat exhaustion. And as
Mhm.
they were trying to get up, one of the RIP cadre would walk up behind them and kick them in the back onto the ground.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah, this is as mean a scene as you can imagine. And these guys say, "Hey, mothers, quit sending us your weak offspring." So
Oh
I,
my
I I
God.
always think I'm the biggest wimp who ever made it through that process.
Oh my. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm traumatized just listening to it. So,
Well,
I'm definitely weak.
well, it was only about, you have to really want to do things.
Hmm.
You have to, your reputation as a triathlete precedes you, by the way. We all know better. So, so anyway, so we go to the first Ranger Battalion, and the 11 of the 18 of us went to the first Ranger Battalion, and I got assigned to platoon, and I was in Charlie Company, third platoon, third squad. And my first job was as a Bravo team rifleman. And
Oh,
we're now going to train 48 weeks a year. It's
really?
the craziest training schedule in the military, and it's one of the most highly appropriated units in the military. And they say in the Ranger Regiment that everything we train to standard, not to time. So, in other words, a lot of people in the military do the same things as special operations forces, but they'll just do them once or twice. And special operations forces tend to do them until they're done perfectly. And
I
so
see.
that's all the gasoline we need, all the ammunition we need, all the time it takes to make sure that you get it right, and to make
Hmm.
sure that the people who are doing the work are capable. And it's extremely detailed work.
I have a question. So, you're with these 11 guys. Are you now with other Rangers that were already
Oh yeah,
Rangers?
just
Okay.
11 of us went to this battalion, which I think had 600 or 700 guys in it at the time.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And, and so that, that became my family for the next just under 4 years. And those are the guys that I went took a deployment to Afghanistan with, and then a deployment to Iraq. And those are still some of the people that next to my wife and the rest of my family are some of my closest friends and family, to this day.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that you became close with the guys that you were doing that with. It just seems like an upside of it, and also a necessary part of it.
It'll always be a part of me, Lindsay, when we're talking about what I do for a living, when we're talking about the personal things I believe in, when we're talking about faith, when we're talking about spiritual health and mental health. One of the key things that I take out of the Army is accountability. And one thing that was impressed upon me was that I would only be surrounded by people who were accountable to me and to whom I had to be accountable. This is something that I'm a financial advisor in my professional life.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that people know, hey, Steve might not be the smartest guy, or he might not get it right every time, or we might make lots of mistakes. But we will always be there. We will always get to the bottom line. We will always be straightforward. And we'll never, we would rather die than let you down. That's the standard that I like to apply to life.
That's awesome, and I think people that work with you are lucky to have you come with that sort of m- mindset. I would say into the financial world, because like anything, um, not everybody that you not everybody in your field would carry that same sort of mindset. Not everybody anywhere would carry that same sort of mindset, to be honest. But I think that's amazing.
Well, thank God, and a lot of the wisdom, if I ever have any, that I've picked up, Lindsay, is through mistakes. And King Solomon says that beatings produce wisdom, and a large portion of my beatings were self-induced.
Hmm.
I've been sober now by the grace of God for 20 plus years, but
Same.
good, excellent. I was a raging alcoholic with that affected my moral compass, and that affected, my accountability, and all of the great things about me, and it affected me a great deal. And and I feel like maybe it made me a late bloomer in life, and so on and so forth. But now I feel that you know that sort of scar tissue makes a person stronger, and that kind of experience makes you more patient with other human beings and more patient with yourself, and humble before God, and all the things that are important as far as going through life, and feeling good, and being able to spread that kind of spirit to other people that are around you, which I think is important. Is probably the main reason we're here.
Yes, agreed on all of that. Um, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, were you sober? Were you sober when you were in the military, or did you get sober while you were? Because I know you mentioned
Oh
you
no.
enjoyed drinking for part of the training.
When I was in the Army, I lived life like it was a cowboy movie, and I drank
Mm.
maybe three-quarters of a bottle of whiskey every day,
Oof.
and maybe more. I would wake up after a 45-minute sleep and go for a blistering 3 or 5 mile run, and then come back and nap for 45 minutes, and then draw a machine gun and load a bunch of machine gun ammunition onto a truck, go out to a range and shoot for 7 or 8 hours, and
Oh
then
my gosh.
come back and go to the gym, and then go out to an Irish bar in Savannah, and do it all over again.
Were you someone who didn't have hangovers, or were you just pushing on through?
I was kind of always hungover and always with a splitting headache. And, it's
Hmm.
either freezing cold or blistering hot in Georgia.
Right.
And always, I was just tough in a way no one needs to be, eating dried top ramen out of the cargo pocket in my, BDUs, and tough as nails, I guess. But
Hmm.
when you drink like that, you're always kind of sick to your stomach, and
Hmm.
it's incredible to me that I put myself through a physical time like that with such a there were times when I would be going through DTs, and I'm in some physical school or something like that that the Army sent me to, and you
Hmm.
kind of you don't just come down right away off all of that drinking.
No.
So, you know I never underestimate our ability to make it difficult on ourselves, right?
Oh my gosh. That's one of my main character traits is I can take anything and blow it up into something that's now, a huge traumatic event. Um, I do know I did not obviously was not in the army or military at all, but I can relate to pushing through life, just with a hangover and a bad attitude, just generally speaking, not operating at my best, and I will say this on the topic of being tough. I feel like so many of the sober alcoholics I know are tough in a different way, just because of what what we put ourselves through when we were out there, and then just the process of sobering up and connecting with a higher power and taking account and being accountable for your actions now, but also for your actions, in the past, takes a lot of uh, for me, I think it takes mostly a connection with a higher power. I have strength from that, but it also takes a certain amount of, you know, chutzpah to come in and just say, "Hey, I messed this up," to people over and over and over, to go to each person and admit that you had done them harm in some way and that you were going to try to make that up to them, and those kinds of things. I think for me are like you, or like your experience of being in the Rangers, it did things for you that carried on positively into the rest of your life. For me, the process of getting sober carried on positively into the rest of my life in a way that I would not have had I not gone through the process of being drunk, putting myself through all of the hell, and then getting sober. I just wouldn't have that, be able to have that perspective.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree 100% about that. And the amends process is beautiful. And humility does not come easily to people. Neither does just being straightforward, just
mhm,
communicating with people and telling them, if people told people the truth all the time, or told people how they really felt about things before even they made minor plans in life, it would be much better on everybody. And I think that people who have gone through the 12-step process and worked a program do have the experience of being straightforward in a way that does not come naturally to any of us.
mhm,
And I think it's extremely helpful. And again, it's one of those things where the broken tissue becomes stronger, or the
mhm,
you
mhm.
know the link gets even stronger. So.
Yeah, I think that that's a good way of putting it. The process of being broken for me is something that I draw on, to get through tough times now. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes I'm like, oh, poor me, this is happening or something for a few minutes. Have that little pity party. And then I'm like, geez, I mean, life today is good. There's really nothing happening in my life that isn't a high bottom problem, a Cadillac problem. There just really isn't
Oh,
portion.
I love that. I love talking about perspective. So, when I wake up in the morning, I try and do this every day. but I don't always get around to it. I like to sit Indian style on the couch or on the floor, and I like to meditate for 10, 15, hopefully 20 minutes. And then afterwards, I get on my knees and I pray to God. And when I'm praying to God, I'm told to say the Lord's Prayer and a few others, but to pray for patience and perseverance and presence and perspective. And the perspective thing is something that sometimes, in an instant, your perspective changes and you
Mm-hmm.
feel better about things, or you understand the way you're supposed to approach something. And that's one of the things that that kind of separates us from being in tune. And some of the things like being present, brushing your teeth while you're brushing your teeth, driving to work while you're driving to work, having the conversation with a client while you're having a conversation to a client. That's excellent. And then, having some detachment as well is excellent. These are things I read about in, spiritual self-help groups,
Mm-hmm.
back before I got connected to Jesus Christ, and they're very, very helpful when you think about, applying, uh, you know, applying yourself to daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have the exact same regimen in the morning, although I do meditate, and I feel a connection to my higher power throughout the day. I do make sure I check in. I am someone who regularly forgets and wants to take control of everything in my life.
You're
And
not alone.
so I'll be like, gosh, this is painful, And I realize, well, because you're bashing your head against a wall. Why don't you connect, turn it over a little bit and turn over my will? And when I do that, then things just sort of, happen, and they may not unfold in the way that I envision them unfolding or think that I need them to unfold or want them to unfold or whatever. But it's always better than what my own brain can come up with. And I've had an experience recently where I switched jobs, and I've talked about it a little bit on the show, but I was really in a position where I was really trying to control all these outcomes, and it wasn't working, and I was in a lot of pain, and I just started asking for help, like, please God, so just I cannot do this. Um, and when I'm in that flow, I mean, some people call it God, some people call it Buddha, some people call it higher power. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, what people call it. Just that connectivity. When I get in that flow, um, things happen, and I don't have to struggle or make them happen. And that's something I just experienced, like with this new job. It just popped up, just like here. It didn't wasn't there though until I was like, I gotta, I can't. My best ideas aren't working, and I'm in a lot of pain.
That
So,
that's the best. I just moved from one firm to another after 17 years.
oh, wow.
Last year, so this is my year anniversary with
Oh.
my new firm. But yeah, there were a lot of times where our imagination is fascinating because we project things into the future that aren't going to happen,
Hmm.
or we different outcomes, or we see things from the wrong perspective or from the
Yeah.
worst perspective, or sometimes from a perspective that's better than it should be, and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And so it's easy to let those things make us uncomfortable. Well, one of the most important things that I have to understand all the time is that the information is already here. We already have it. We already know these things. We already have it all within you, and it's just about us, dialing in to that by mellowing ourselves out. you
Hmm.
know, I was a guy who, little later in life than other people, became very driven,
Hmm.
and that drive is a great strength. Never stop, persevere, keep going, keep going. And another thing that I have that goes along with that is an attention to detail, which I probably always had, and maybe the Army made me weird that way as far as attention to detail. So I got this drive and this attention to detail, and that's good. But it also can build up anxiety, or anxiety in other people around you, or it can make you think that you're running the ship, and stop paying attention to the direction you should be getting from God.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think we all have this in our stomach, Lindsay. I think we have this like compass that guides us around, in our gut, and it's a question of understanding that. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
I believe that decisions, important decisions, are made in like a three-step process, and I articulate it as this: you have fantasy, then you have vision, and then you have execution.
Huh.
And, fantasy is when you're kind of thinking about something, the way it might work out. Gosh, that would be cool if it worked out that way. And then vision is when you're actually starting to uh, see how it might work it out, talk with other people about it, look at what are the schematics behind this? Can we really pull this off? Will this really be an effective thing to do? Does this make sense? The dollars and cents and all of that type of stuff. And then you finally get into execution of things. And it's helpful for me to think about decisions like that, because some of them stay in fantasy forever, or some of them go into vision and they kind of die there. But all of these things, the most important thing is to be paying attention, and to be seeing the way things are really going down, and not
Hmm.
trying to drive them according to my imagination.
Right.
So.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that for sure. I love to think up things, and I have a lot of things that probably stay in the fantasy, world, because I'm like, ooh, this would be great. But I mean, when I talk them through with my partner who's also sober, or my sponsor, I'll say, I'm thinking about this, and then they may have a question or two that is like, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that part. I only thought about the good part, not reality. Um, and that's why it's great to have people in your life, I think, that can um, you can bounce things off of too. I know my own, you know,
Absolutely.
right? To just be able to say, like, this is what I'm thinking, but I'm aware that not all of my thinking is my best thinking. Um, so I have those people in my life. And do you have particular people in your life that you kind of run these things by, or that you use as your sounding board?
You know what? I sure do, and thank God I've got all kinds of friends around me. In the professional sphere, I'm really lucky because everybody I work with is smarter than I am. And from the beginning, they've all had more experience, and I started out, and my first clients were principals and accounting firms and that sort of thing. And you to really learn from people about that. I learned business from people who knew what they were talking about, in the context of doing what was the right thing for them. And then, in a uh, spiritual setting, I'm been taking advice from other men and women for a really long time, uh, but I'm also able to help other people. And a lot of times when I'm talking to people about what is backward about them, or how they've got it wrong, I'm really talking to myself, or I'm noticing these things in myself. And so it's really hard to give somebody direction about, what they should be doing in their relationship, for instance,
Mhm.
and not be doing that in your relationship, you know. And so there are both people I go to for advice and mentors, and then there's the process of uh, helping other people or giving other people direction. And
Mhm.
then, once in a while that cobbler's children have no shoes or something like
Right.
that. You can give good advice and not get it. A lot of times that helps you. Um, I've got all kinds of people who give me advice and give me direction and who I'm either able to bounce things off or who are able to you know give me some guidance. And I think it's really important to be able to to share things with people. I mean, this is one of the things that makes life fulfilling is that we're all going through this together.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and gosh, I mean, I belong to this all these boards of directors, and I'm
Mhm.
sure you do the same thing. But learning from people, for instance, in the Rotary Club,
Uh-huh.
I go to this garage on Saturday mornings and smoke cigars with these guys who are all in their late 70s or early 80s. You know,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
if you want to learn, it's like a master's class in business. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and when I was involved with the Fisher House board years ago, I was learning about fundraising from a guy who ran a hospital foundation and another friend of mine who is an ex-congressman. And so,
Mm.
I've been able through the things but I've been able through the things that I do to really get a lot of good advice and meet
Mhm.
just a ton of people who are able to teach me about a lot of things,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's one of the best parts of life.
I agree, and you said a couple things. So for me, I feel like practically, in some ways, practically, to bring the spiritual and the you know physical world together. I feel like sometimes I'm getting my spiritual lessons through other people, through kind of what they're saying or what they do. But the big piece that you touched on that is important, that I think is important, is the getting outside of yourself and helping other people, and in doing so, being able to, um, you know, figure things out for yourself about yourself. And for me, also part of, I think uh, I would say being in touch and staying with my values and my moral compass is when I help other people, it reminds me of, this is who I really am. This is what I think. I might be outside of that a little bit and feeling uncomfortable because I'm doing something, trying to control something or
That's
whatever.
an excellent
Um,
point.
it's like, oh, that's right. Like what you're saying. It's like if I could tell someone, they'll ask me for advice, and then as I'm saying it, I'm like, oh man, I'm not, I'm not doing that myself. Dang it. um, but okay, so you brought up being on the board, and I know that you were doing some work with a veterans group. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Geez, I like service of all kinds. And when I started out, I got sober at the VA, and I got sober at a place called New Directions for Veterans. And that was the first service work that I liked, was helping other veterans, helping other alcoholics, and helping people who are having experiences similar to mine.
Mhm.
The first real hardcore service organization that I belong to, which is still close to my heart, is Rotary.
Mhm.
And I joined Rotary, and that was great because it was like a mothership for all other organizations, and all of the members, each one was like a kind of a diamond in the rough, that if once you picked them up and looked at them, they had a bunch of different things they were involved in. And it
Mhm.
was just a question of, what you're passionate about.
Mhm.
So now I am a member emeritus of the Fisher House of Southern California. I was just at their Christmas party, and that was an important one for me because the Fisher House is a like a Ronald McDonald House.
Mm-hmm.
It is a place where you can stay while your loved ones are receiving treatment in a VA hospital or a Department of Defense hospital.
Oh,
And they're really
awesome.
nice. They're like montage hotel style inside. I
Wow.
mean, they're really, really nice places, and they're right there on the grounds. So that was a place where I really learned about capital campaigns and fundraising. As I was just we went out to raise $3 million, and we ended up raising 4.5, because once you
Wow.
get that engine going, it just goes. And the people who talk about mentors, I was learning from Steve Kuykendall, who was an Anglican Marine and an ex-congressman. He's no longer with us. He's one of my best friends. And my friend Terry Geiling, who is a submarine officer and is then an IBM executive. And these were the guys that we started these things with, and that was marvelous. And then there is the American Gold Star Manor. American Gold Star Manor is and again, this stuff all ties back to Rotary Club. There were 10 members of the board of both of these originally, and 7 or 8 of them were Rotarians. So
Oh,
a
okay.
friend of ours calls us the do-gooder mafia. So you get a good group of people who are tied in, and the guy who introduced you and I, Tony Gales, he's one of those
Mm-hmm.
guys that's involved
Oh,
in everything good, right?
mm-hmm.
Okay, and who we've been doing this stuff with for a long time. So the American Gold Star Manor, and I'm the vice chair there. It's a housing project for the moms and dads of dead soldiers and for elderly veterans. And we're at Santa Fe in Spring in Long Beach. And there are hundreds of apartments. It's a nice area with a lot of green space, and it's kind of all around this big central garden. And we call it Long Beach's best kept secret. But
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that that kind of thing even existed.
oh, it's great, and I've got to have you for like the Memorial Day
Yeah.
celebration there, and it's cool because two of our members of the board are uh, the first vice president and the president of the American Gold Star Mothers,
Ah.
which is a an organization based out of Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
And we're always supporting them. We're always taking guidance from them. They're people who show us the direction we should be headed in. They're also the
Mhm.
people who told us, "Hey, you need to start a Fisher House in for the Long Beach VA." So
Oh,
the
okay.
Gold Star moms give us a lot of direction about, okay, what's the right what's the right cause for veterans, and
Mhm.
that's what should we be focusing on.
That's
And then
awesome.
I'm currently on the board of the YMCA of Greater Long Beach,
Oh,
and I
okay.
think there's just so many great things. When I talk about my involvement with the Y, when I talk about my involvement with the Boy Scouts, it's important that Carlos Slim said, instead of making the world a better place for our children, we should be making better children for the world. And I can get hardcore, I can get cynical, and I don't have any kids, so it's very easy for me to judge people who do, and
Mhm.
that they're creating a softer generation, or that these
Mhm.
people aren't accountable, and so on and so forth. So instead of getting, slipping into darkness about that, it's so much better for me to support the type of things that I believe in, and to
Mhm.
support, organizations that produce young people who look me in the eye and who are accountable. And there are a lot of people doing a lot of great things, and I want to be a part of that. And I want to be a part of making a better generation of young people. And so that's a lot of the involvement that I'm into right now. There's one more. I'll
Mhm.
mention this and then shut up. The Long Beach Community Foundation, which is a beautiful organization which looks at the greater Long Beach community, how we can improve it, uh, and also looks at how can we support the philanthropic interests of people who have the treasure, had the inclination, but don't know in which direction to steer it or how to get it in the direction they want it steered. Or the third part of that is supporting uh, local nonprofits and making sure that despite their size, that they're able to handle all of the administrative needs that they need,
Mm.
and we can custody their funds for them, and we can help them do their books, and so on and so forth. So that is another great organization. I'm about to term off that board, but
Mhm.
that's another place where I've just learned so much. It's incredible.
Well, that's all amazing. You are definitely a inspiration in terms of giving back to the community. And now I'm kind of going, what am I actually doing other than kind of being frustrated, you know?
Are you
Um,
kidding? You're doing a lot of good. You and Mike are doing a lot of good here.
well, that's our goal. That's one of our goals is to make us a place where people can, listen and relate and not feel isolated and alone in their potentially in their struggles or what they're going through, or sometimes to add some levity, when we talk about athletics and things like that, which is something I want to touch on with you at the end here. Um, but I just want to say kudos to you because you just listed off like, I don't even know how many things that you're currently involved in. And I love the idea, especially right now in time, of finding something that you can do that's a positive thing as opposed to going over to the dark side of like this all sucks and I can't, whatever the problem is, um and I do have children. They are older now, they're young adults. I they you know they were kept alive until they until they became adults, so that's a parental win, and I kind of know what you're talking about in terms of creating a somewhat softer generation. I feel like there was sort of, since my kids are older, they missed out on some of the upside as children of just being able to do whatever they want or say whatever. They missed that part, but it's probably a good thing in a lot of ways. Um, and it's. But with that said, as young adults, my daughter especially has expressed just frustration with the world today. And while you were talking, I was thinking about like maybe there's something that she and I could do together that would be, beneficial in terms of changing the perspective, kind of like what we talked about earlier. It's just all about perspective. Like, are you going
Hmm.
to help be part of the change, or are you going to wait for a change, or are you going to complain about the change, or what are you going to do? And so I appreciate you inspiring me today for that. And I'm setting an intention now to do something about that when we get off this call. um,
That inspiration
okay.
is entirely mutual.
Well, thank you. I just have been listening and enjoying myself immensely. Um, okay, just last thing before you go, because I'm looking at you and I can tell you didn't go back to being a lump on the couch after you left the Rangers. You look like you are fit, and so just curious, what do you do to stay physically fit?
I kind of I'm glad that we're all focusing on this because physical fitness and exercise is something that's almost like cheating as far as spiritual health. It really helps us, and I know it really helps you too to be physical. So I go to the gym 5 times a week. I try and do 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise 5 times a week. I was fat shamed by a woman in a clothing shop in Palm Springs who said, Steve, you need to do 30 minutes of cardiovascular exercise every day. And every time I pass that shop now or I'm in Palm Springs, I stop in and give her a hug because she was right. 25 minutes doesn't keep me skinny and 40 minutes doesn't do any more for me. So
Mhm.
I have to, I have to run a stair stepper or Nordic track for 30 minutes
Mhm.
every time I go to the gym. And then I have a weight regimen. It's one that I started in the Army where I do back and chest
Mm.
one day and I do shoulders another day. And then I do biceps and triceps the third day. And then I have
Mhm.
two alternating sets along those those days, one with leg curls and the other one with leg curls and extensions, and then
Mm-hmm.
another one for calves and presses, and
Mm-hmm.
so that tends to do gym work for me when I do that in the morning before I go to work. And should I not be able to do that, then I just get out, on mornings like this morning, for a run. And
Mm-hmm.
the runs are generally just like 30 minutes. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
51-year-old man now, and I'm not beating myself to death, but I try and stay in shape.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of walking I do with my wife. She and I are into urban hiking. We take these,
Mm-hmm.
3, 5, sometimes 7 mile walks together, and that's a
Nice.
blast. And generally, we just walk through neighborhoods where we want to look at the houses,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a lot of fun. And some of the longer ones will be, on the Strand in the South Bay, or we'll drive to a location and walk. That's kind of our favorite thing. So
I love the idea of urban hiking. That's kind of a cool idea. I'd never heard that term, but I think that's a really neat thing to do.
it's wonderful. I'm really into scuba diving, and we go
Mm,
after lobsters, particularly in the fall and winter months, and
mm,
that's a blast. That's something that has I have just the right amount of concentration, and I really love that. Uh, so I go into the desert with friends of mine. I have friends who are involved in looking for prehistoric North American artifacts, and
oh,
that'll
wow.
generally involve walking around the desert for 3 or 5 miles. And so, scuba, getting out on the water, getting out in the desert, walking around, going to the gym. I belong to a gun club in Huntington Beach,
Hmm. I
and
think Tony mentioned that he shoots with you.
I love that. I mean that's something that if you approach it correctly involves focus and accountability. I'm a big believer in liberty. I think this is the greatest country in the world. I think we have can have the greatest society in the world as far as liberty is concerned. But we need accountability to be locked, you know, tied to liberty. and,
Hmm.
and and I think it's really important that people learn, with guns or with automobiles or dare I say with relationships or families,
Hmm.
that they need to be focused, that they need to be accountable, that they can do whatever they want. And you and I would say this in our tradition that we could do whatever we want, provided we're willing to accept the consequences, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The whole gun topic is interesting. I've always just been like, I don't like guns. I don't care if other people have them as long as they're responsible with them. I'm afraid of them. But my partner Josh, a couple of years ago, felt um, for for our safety in our home, he felt that he wanted to get a gun, and he has one, and he went to the range and he learned everything about it, and he has it in a locked place, and he's been encouraging me to learn how to shoot, and I've been very resistant to doing that. But over the last, I don't know, 6 months to a year, I'd say 6 months to 9 months, I've become more open to it. I have a girlfriend who was like, you know, it's not going to harm you to learn how to responsibly handle a gun. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, and it might help you. And so, I'm I've slowly become more open to it. It's not anything I've done yet, but I've agreed to Josh that I would be willing to go try, and so that's a little journey I'm about to go on. And he said, even just for the safety of the fact we have one in our home, like I need to know what to do with it, and so I'm going to be making a little journey to learn how to shoot. I'm kind of afraid, but I'm also kind of like, it's another challenge, another thing I can learn and get good at, and so that part is exciting to me.
I think I know you're going to be great, and I would I love to share this with other people. There's so many powerful things in our lives, be they firearms or vehicles, or even the intranet and you know the pen is mightier than the sword, let's say, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
anyone can use this communicate second part of the communications revolution to just disseminate information quickly. But it seems to me that whether you're a middle school student or the president of a large country, that you might not take that responsibility, that awesome responsibility, that awesome power as seriously as you should. And
Mhm.
so it's important for everybody to understand as much as they can about the awesome power that we're able to to wield
Mhm.
and to connect back to connect back to God, to connect back to what we should be doing, to connect back even to what we want to be doing or intend to be doing. And
Mhm.
so I think that it's going to be a helpful thing and a fun thing for you to do, and it's just another thing that you enjoy and makes you spiritually stronger.
Yep, yep. I'm excited. I've let go of some of my contempt prior to investigation is one of the terms I've learned in a 12-step program. And, you
Me
know,
too.
I'll have it, right? I'll just have, and then I realize like, oh, what am I? I don't even know anything about this. Like, what is it I don't like? How can I dislike something I know zero about? So I'm letting go of my contempt prior to investigation where that's concerned. Um, well, Steve, I could talk to you for another 5 hours. And maybe we will have to do another episode because I think you and Mike have so much in common to talk about. But we've hit our limit for the show in and of itself. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It's just really been a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. I've really enjoyed our conversation as well. Thank you for having me, and what a wonderful thing to be a part of.
Thank you so much. Folks, we will see you again next week. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, just subscribe. And if you have it in your heart, give us a few stars, hopefully five. That helps our show spread to other people who might benefit from hearing us. All right. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.